Hmm.
Welcome, everybody. My name's Darby. I'm a librarian with Vancouver Island Regional Library, and I'm joined by my colleague, I think she's right there for you too, Ginger, with the fun rainbow clouds behind her. And uh, we basically do all the tech stuff for you, don't we? So we've got this great partnership with the Master Gardeners from the Vancouver Island Master Gardeners Association, who are so keen to share their knowledge and answer your questions that they have been coming on Zoom with us for years and living on YouTube indefinitely. And I think we've got probably our most core Master Gardeners to this program here tonight with Joe, Dorothy, and Richard. So this right normally on these nights we will have a presentation by the host master gardener and then we answer your questions. But the format tonight is a panelist one, so they're going to talk about their in not a ton of depth, maybe they're going to do a bit of intro about how they like to do their spring prep, and then we're opening it up to your questions. So we would like you to put your questions in the Q&A at the bottom of the screen because that helps us to keep track of the questions. The chat, they get lost, and then we get sad that we've missed your questions. So please do use the Q&A, and you can put things in the chat about your experiences or sort of chime in because that makes it more interactive. For privacy type things, only Ginger and myself and Joe and Dorothy and Richard are going to appear on the video. So you are still totally anonymous and protected in your, gardening status, etc. We are recording the session, so if you get cut off or you wanted to share it with a friend, we'll be sending it out after. And yeah, do you guys want me to? I'll tell you a little bit about each of the master gardeners in case you don't know them. We'll start with Richard. Richard Bernier's gardening hobby started as a preteen when one of his elderly neighbors hired him for his first job to help them in their garden. They showed him what plants were weeds and directed him to a veggie garden that was in dire need of weeding. He did this on and off gardening until his teens when he discovered indoor plants. You can see a fairly large one behind him, and that started his journey in plant husbandry. The gardening bug had bitten him. After moving to the coast in 1994, he became enamored with the climate and developed a taste for exotic plants, both indoor and outdoor. And a huge thank you to Richard for coordinating all of the panelists, etc. Um, let's move on to, I think we got Joe next. Joe Canning, she learned how to garden on her grandparents' Fraser Valley truck farm and in her mother's urban food and ornamental garden on Vancouver's west side. So pretty different spots there. For over 45 years, she's gardened in climates as diverse as BC's Sunshine Coast, Vancouver Island, Nova Scotia, the UK, the American Southwest Desert, and at altitude and the Rocky Mountains. In her 29 years, it's maybe 30 now, as a master gardener, she's
30.
helped manage community gardening initiatives and taught urban food gardening to groups at risk of food insecurity. She's also taught seminars at Van Dusen Garden Botanical Garden and horticultural associations, garden clubs, VIU's Master Gardener training classes, horticultural technician program, and she's a regular on this series as well. Her articles and photos have appeared in local and international magazines, and her present focus is on helping urban gardeners develop strategies in our changing climate to keep their landscapes sustainable as well as beautiful. And last but not least is Dorothy Kieser, who I think you still hold the record for the most views on your favorite vegetables
Yes.
and how to grow them. She's very humble about that. I thought you should know that too. So she's been a certified master gardener for over 12 years and brings to the library seminars her scientific approach from her career as a biologist, as well as a wealth of experience from her own extensive home orchards, vegetable and flower, and rhododendron gardens. In addition to her volunteer work with the Master Gardeners, Dorothy is an active member of the Bevan Learning Garden, which is a large local community garden featuring a greenhouse in Nanaimo, and has given numerous seminars on many gardening topics to gardening clubs and associations. She is the president for the Vancouver Island chapter and is one of the chapter's mentors to new members. She was talking about how many new master gardeners are being taken in before we started and let you folks in the room. Plus, she's part of the steering committee that ensures high standards are kept for the basic training at VIU. I'm surprised you have time to come to these, Dorothy.
I have time. I wish I had more time in my garden, is really what it boils down to. But
She's like, it's still
it's
light
all
out. I
fun
could be
and games.
outside.
All fun and
So
games.
thank you for being here and sharing all of that great experience with us in our virtual room together. Um, let's have. Do you want to go? We'll have Richard, Joe, and then Dorothy describe kind of their routine for spring preparation.
Well, my the beginning of spring for me is late February, early March. At that time, I start preparing my seeds for some of the cold weather vegetables. I've had my peas in probably for about 4 weeks now, and they're about that big. Um, the other thing is spring cleanup. I normally leave my perennials with last year's season's growth on it. Just harbor habitat for bugs and you name it. And basically, I just cut them down and chop, 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 leave them where they drop. What else? Pot up my dahlias. Great time this spring, probably about this time or a couple of weeks ago. I was putting in my spring bulbs and what else? Oh, ground layering of rhodos. We just did a seminar at Milner Gardens, and I was showing students how to ground layer, and that's what I've done in my garden also. I've done a couple of rhodos that I brought from my old property to here. Greenhouse, my clivias are all in full bloom, so the ones that aren't blooming, I take them out and they're out in a protected spot so that they can take probably, let's say, 2 or 3 degrees without a problem. We haven't had that for, I'd say, a couple of weeks now. It's been averaging about 4 or 5 degrees outside. Uh, Mason bees, got my mason bee houses out, cleaned and put in. I did that a couple of weeks ago, just in time for my pear tree to start flowering. Um, very important at this time of the year is my greenhouse is making sure that it doesn't get too hot or too cold. So I vary the temperature in there. Right now, I have it set for 15 degrees and 30. So at 30 degrees, it opens the vents and the fan goes on. At 15, it holds at that at night. So it's more like late spring in my greenhouse, where outside it's still early spring. Fertilized all my pots, my potted plants. I have an oleander, some cycads, some other large plants that I put continuous feed fertilizer in it. Yeah, I think that's probably about it. It's what I've done so far. And yeah, it's a busy time of the year for me.
That's all.
That's
That was a lot of stuff, Richard.
And you ought to see what he does in the afternoons.
my mornings are all booked up.
If this isn't obvious in the poll, there's some newer gardeners. This can be a full-on lifestyle if you choose to make
Oh
it
yeah,
so.
definitely. And you're retired, you've got all the time on your hands. You know, it's a really good hobby to get into because it gets you out, you're in fresh air, and it's lovely. Okay, now
And
it's
you can garden as much or as little
as you
as you
want.
like.
Yeah.
And one of the things that will do in new gardeners faster than any other thing is ambition. So the important thing is to take it slow, have a few plants, and learn about those plants. Because what you learn about those plants will teach you about 10 others.
Mhm.
And if you're interested in growing food, again, and I'm sure Dorothy and I have both learned this over the years, um, Okay, so you got 10 seeds. Doesn't mean they all have to go in the ground. You got 10 plants, give them away. Keep the two that you're going to eat. Um, and just never plant what you don't like to eat. Don't plant it because you think you should,
Mhm.
because that is a waste of time and life is too short. Um, but anyway,
Well, once they're planted, or once they're growing, you can always give them to your neighbors. Or,
exactly. You give away what you don't use.
yeah.
Or you gift wrap your zucchini and put them in the car, leave the window open and wait for somebody to come along and make off with them.
Yeah.
But no, I totally agree with you, Joe. Planning, planning, planning. And that's one of the things that takes up a fair bit of my time this time of the year is to plan my vegetable garden. I'm mostly a vegetable gardener, even though I have other plants like rhododendrons and other ornamentals. But my heart is really in the vegetable gardening. And it's hard not to plant too much. Every year, I think I'm only going to plant 10 of those lettuces and maybe five of this and five of that. And then I end up having three perennial kales that are taller than I am, and however many sprouting broccolis and endless lettuce. Now, mind you, if I could grow only one type of greens, then lettuce would have to be definitely it. But yeah, the planning, and especially to see what you're going to eat. Not everybody's going to eat broad beans like I love broad beans, but when I try to sell broad beans at the Nanaimo Community Gardens, people look at me as though I was slightly out of my mind because who would want to eat broad beans? Well, me, for instance. But anyway, in
Well, and
terms of
all
what
Italian neighbors, right?
yes,
Right.
they too, for sure.
Yeah.
But what I do this time of the year is, like I was just saying, I rip out more than I plant because I'm a great winter vegetable gardener and I like to have greens throughout the entire season. So now I still probably have easily 20 huge heads of radicchio in my garden and the last of the endives. And now my spinach is starting to come. So it's time that I actually got rid of some of the things. Um, I think one of the things that's really important this time of the year is step back. Don't rush into the season. It's too cold. I mean, we're not at 90 degrees like some of our listeners are. So we're here on Vancouver Island. The nights are still reasonably cold. I mean, here in Nanaimo, our nights are usually around 4 or 5 degrees centigrade, and the days are 12 to 15. We've had some warmer days, but the soil is still cold. And so give your plants a chance. If you plant them later, you will not really lose anything. So wait. The other thing is, for those of you who have planted garlic and have mulched them beautifully, and great thing to do throughout the winter so that they survive the winter well. Now's the time to actually warm them up by removing that mulch. So dig down a little bit, remove those leaves or the bark mulch or whatever you've put there. Hey, it doesn't matter what it is, but remove it because that gives the sun a chance to warm up the soil. The other thing that I always have to keep myself from doing is um, putting digging or rototilling. I am still a rototiller, even though they tell me that I shouldn't be tilling or that I shouldn't be digging, but I'm old school, so I still do some of that. Um, and you want to be sure that your soil is dry enough because otherwise you just get horrendous clumps that you're incredibly hard to break up. So give yourself a chance, let the soil warm up, let the soil dry out a bit, and then plant stuff. I mean, Richard said he has the peas up, and I think that's marvelous. I have peas up too, but I'm a great believer in starting things indoors so that my soil outside can warm up quite a bit more. And so I start things, including the peas, indoors, and I've just now outplanted them, and they're starting to crawl up the fence, and very, very encouraging to see. Same for my broad beans. I started them indoors when my garden guru, Linda Gilkison, and I hope you all, certainly those that are on the West Coast, are familiar with Linda Gilkison and read her books. She says put them in the fall. I personally like putting them in the spring after I start them in my little well, my kitchen is taken over by my heat mat and my grow lights so that I can really start things. So that keeps me plenty busy this time of the year, aside from a few other things.
When I was talking about the peas, my peas are in a raised bed, and it's dark colored, so it actually warms up a lot warmer or a lot faster than the actual soil level. So you also have to know, like if it's in a protected spot, not out in the wind, well, it'll be a little bit warmer and you can maybe push the season a little bit. The other thing is, if you plant them early enough, you can also get a second crop with peas. And that's what I've done the last couple of years.
So you put them in August and have a fall crop.
July, the end of July. And
End of
then I
July,
have,
you put them in.
yeah, and then I have a fall crop of peas. And my
Mm.
beans, I do start them in the greenhouse also,
Yeah.
from seed from last year.
Yes, yes. But for me, this is a busy time of year in terms of cleaning up. And one of the things that for those of you who do the green manure, i.e., have a winter crop of whether it's fall rye or clover or whatever it might be, this is the time of year to mow them probably and then to dig them in. Because if you wait too long, they get so big that it's much harder to deal with that kind of stuff. So if you have the winter cover crop, now is a good time to deal with it.
Mhm. Another good thing to do at this time of the year is dividing perennials. Probably in the last a couple of weeks ago here would have been an ideal time to actually divide them and move them around in the garden. Yeah.
No, but it's just a lovely time of year. Everything's blooming, and we can really tell our friends in the East Coast and elsewhere how absolutely marvelous it is. So we can brag a bit. It's quite wonderful.
I think
And
one of the things about stepping back that you said, Dorothy, that is so important is that as we've alluded to here in the Pacific Northwest, spring emerges at a steady pace, but a very slow pace. And in areas, well, as our friend from South Carolina or the Bay Area, not only is spring earlier, it's faster. And so you do need to step back and look and just see what's emerging. In my small front garden, I noticed my sweet woodruff didn't seem to be doing anything. And then I noticed a good foot away, there was a patch of it because, of course, it spreads by underground runners. And uh, I was about to dig in that area. And I thought, wait a minute, take a look, what's going on? And it was actually spreading in the area that I hoped it had. So that let the plants tell you, let the ground tell you. If you stick your hands in the ground and you can't keep your hand to the knuckles of your hand in the dirt comfortably, it's too cold. You know, let the plants tell you. And I think that's a wonderful thing about the spring flowering bulbs, is that you'll notice that I had some little brave green noses up in January, and then it froze, and they just wait, and then they come up a little more, and then they come up a little more. And some areas of my garden, my pushkinianas, which are a squill, little striped squill, they look much like bluebells. One section of it, they're finished. The other section, 15 feet away, they're just emerging. And that's how much a garden in spring can change. And um, if you want to be successful at whatever you do, letting the plants and the ground tell you what's going on really is a key.
letting the
And it
plants Go ahead, Joe.
No, just that, Dorothy.
Yeah, no, but letting the plants tell you, one of the things that you will find, or I certainly find a lot in my veggie garden, where I don't have the remaining radicchios and whatnot, is the plants are telling me it's time to weed because all of a sudden you see all these dandelions shoot up and all the creeping buttercup and you name it, multitude of weeds. Now is a good time before you have to do a whole lot of else. And and it's still they're still pretty little on the whole if you've done a good job in the fall of weeding. Now's the time to get your little trowel or knife that you stick into the ground and cut them off before they bloom and before they spread. One of the things that well, dandelions for sure, but the other thing is the bitter cress, or it has a number of names that is really thriving this time of the year. So get those out of there before they make seeds and spread all over, and you have a much harder time once your plants are in, and then trying to dig them out and not dig out the plants that you actually want to grow.
And
I've been
having
doing-
that to me, that's the weeds are kind of a gift because I can pull out the small weeds and I got all that green and I just chop it, and that's a wonderful source of nitrogen. And right now, the most fertilizers, someone's asking about that. When your soil is cold, the fertilizers don't work. So don't waste your time. They just get washed away. Uh, and nitrogen, that is water soluble, is really active first. And of course, that's what plants need first is green growth. So having those little weeds, just take out your garden scissors and chop off the greenery and just scratch it in. And particularly if you're in a sunny area, rather than leaving it on top to dry, just scratch it in. Don't trowel it in deeply. Just scratch it in, throw a bit of dirt over it. And you've got a wonderful nitrogen-rich fertilizer, plus adding mulch or adding tilth into the soil, and weeding all at the same time. So you're doing one job instead of two.
The one good thing about right at this time though, the rhodos are actually out in flower. Most of them are, and now is a really good time to do fertilize your rhododendrons. I use a continuous release, and that way I'm assured that it's going to leak out from the little granules for the whole season or 3 months at least. So that's pretty well covered. I don't have to do it again. And I've been weeding my garden probably for the last 3 weeks now. And right, that little bittercress or whatever you called it, Dorothy, it's you let it go and there's seeds all over the place. They just blow up. And next year you've got all this little green things growing everywhere.
And
the
someone has
dandelions
asked,
are exactly the same.
and someone
Yeah.
has asked about putting fertilizer in the soil when you seed. And there's been very much a changing focus on that. And for me, I make sure that my fall soil has been fed. So it's got the compost, it's got the mulch, and then it kind of sits all winter. The only time that I put fertilizer when something is going in the ground is if I have a heavy feeding vegetable that is already well on its way. A seed contains everything it needs. Putting fertilizer in with it will often, when it emerges, burn its roots. So letting the seed, if you're planting in place, letting the seed begin and get its true sets of leaves, not the two little ones that come up, but the ones that show you what kind of plant it is. Then side dress it with a light fertilizer. The key is always have your soil prepped well in advance. And if you feel that you need to put fertilizer or manure in, give it 2 weeks, because that soil will work, and it's the soil that feeds the plant. So fertilizer livens up the soil. You don't feed your plant with fertilizer. You feed the soil, and the soil feeds the plant. And as Richard was saying, his slow release pellets can drip, drip, drip into the soil, and the soil works at the rate that the rhododendrons can uptake. So that's sort of the answer about fertilizer and seeding.
It,
There's a couple of things I want to add to that, Joe, if I may.
Oh, of
One of
course.
the things that I certainly want to do this time of the year is to put some lime in my garden. Because we have so much rain and mixed rain in our area. It's not acid rain per se, but it does make the soil more acid. So, in general terms, in your vegetable garden, adding some lime is a good thing, except there's always excepts. I mean, in gardening, there's probably more excepts than in our rules, but do not lime your potato beds. So, if you're going to be growing potatoes, like I tend to, make sure that you have your garden plan ready so you know where you're going to plant your potatoes, and don't lime that part of the garden, but do lime the other beds that you're going to plant kale and lettuce and tomatoes and on and on and on. So this time of the year is a very good thing to do. In terms of what Joe was saying, in terms of the seedlings, when I put my transplants in it, and I do more transplanting than seeding directly into the soil. When I put my transplant in, I love watering them initially with some compost tea. And you can make compost tea in many different ways. You can either use some manure and dilute it greatly and let it sit for a while and use that for watering your new transplants. Or if you have some comfrey, wonderful to make some tea with the comfrey. Just chop it up and put it into a bucket. And when it smells really bad, then use that in a 1 to 4, so 1 part comfrey tea and 4 parts water to water in your seedlings. Any number of things like that. A great seaweed tea is good. And that really gives the plants a good start, and adds a bit of nitrogen, adds some other minerals. It's a little extra work. It's a little extra smell for sure, but it makes for very good plants and good transplanting.
the other thing is I do add some lime to my rhododendrons, and
Yes,
it's
yes.
sprinkle it on the ground around the drip line, and that actually helps them green up quite a bit. Our soil here is quite acid, and iron is hard to take up at that, and calcium. So neutralizing the acid does help a lot.
Not a great deal, but just a little sprinkle.
Just a little sprinkle, exactly. We have there was a question from somebody in the chat. What does lime do? Lime neutralizes the acid in the soil. So it brings the ions closer to neutral. Um, you've got acid on one side, alkali on the other one. In the middle, you have a neutral pH. And most plants do well from about 5 to about maybe 7, maybe even 8. But anything outside, then you're looking at plants that are specifically for like an alkali soil or a very acid soil, like in a bog or something like that.
So there was a question as to whether dolomite lime or otherwise. Personally, I use the agricultural lime because the dolomite lime has its uses, absolutely. It has a fair bit of magnesium in it, and sometimes the magnesium actually makes the soil a lot harder, kind of, especially if it's a clayey soil. So that's why I like the agricultural lime for my setting. But if you're in a soil area where you can take the extra magnesium, then by all means use the dolomite lime.
Oh,
Can we
quite agree.
can
The
we
uh,
get
um, the agricultural lime is used at a much lower rate as well. And we can suffer from a magnesium overload very, very quickly in our type of loamy wet soil.
Right. Can I just get the people who are asking the questions to put your questions in the Q&A and not the webinar chat? It's difficult for us to actually look at the chat and look at the questions at the same time. So please use the Q&A function. Okay, Darby, do we have more questions?
We do. When to reseed grass and any advice with prep? Courtney. I think they're located in Courtney.
Yeah, actually spreading sand on the top of your garden or your grass and just to level it out a little bit and then spreading the seed on that and then just finally raking it in. Though the birds might get quite a few of the seeds unless you actually bury them a little bit. So, maybe spread some sand on top of that, and hopefully the birds won't get it.
I didn't catch whether it was a new area to be seeded or whether it was a
Reseed.
reseeding.
Reseed.
Reseeding,
It was a
yeah.
reseeding. Okay. Yeah. So Richard's description sounds just perfect. And the other thing is, as it starts to sprout, and we have certainly here in Nanaimo, we haven't had very much rain. So make sure that that it stays moist, not wet, but stays moist. So you might already have to put a sprinkler on it if it stays dry. Like we haven't had any rain to speak of in a while, and we seeded some, and I wished we'd put the sprinkler out.
Yeah, it's been a really dry spring here for us, and we're up here in Qualicum Beach. I think we're only about 40% of what we would normally get from January 1st to this time of the year. So
Yeah, you're
really dry year.
you're much drier because you're technically in the northern Mediterranean, whereas in Cowichan Valley, where we're protected by the Sominos Marsh, we're at about 70% of the level. So we haven't suffered quite as badly as the drier parts of the island.
The one thing it's done though for us this year is things that normally wouldn't survive our winters, like some of the annuals, have survived in my garden over this winter. One, because they weren't completely soaked all the time, and secondly, because it's been fairly warm. I had some begonias planted up by the greenhouse, and they were still blooming in the beginning of January. And then we got a -2, and that killed them, but they're still coming back up. So,
Mhm.
Yeah, and that'll really foster the amount of pests we'll have this year too, because the frost didn't kill off a lot of pests. I've already seen a number of slugs, like when I go and get my radicchio for supper. The number of slugs I have to deal with is absolutely remarkable.
blood, it's actually protein.
Thank you. I would sooner have my protein in another source.
Oh, we just have to get ducks,
Hey,
right? Because they
Yeah,
love the
no,
that's
slugs.
we
right.
do
And then
snails.
have those as protein. Yes, that sounds like a plan.
So what else have we
Darby,
got,
are there other
Darby?
questions?
Yeah, can you talk about what you do after tulips flower to get repeat flowering?
Ha.
Hmm.
Well, if you mean repeat flowering as like right away this year, no. Tulips flower once a year. Um, if you mean to get them to flower again, they are a hardy perennial. They will take actually a complete freeze. However, tulips are, in terms of all the geophytes, those are bulbs, are the shortest lived group, and they die away much faster than other bulbs. And it's partly because they have been hybridized for about 500 years. And so in many instances, the hybrid tulips are losing their vigor.
Right.
The best thing with tulips, as well as any other type of bulb, flowering bulb, is you have to allow the bulb to replenish. So bulbs also have roots, okay? And in the spring, the bulb relies on its stored food in the bulb to flower. So it uses up a lot of that storage, and a lot of that bulb are actually modified leaves and flower stems. So in order for them to replenish themselves after the plant is finished flowering, you can deadhead it or take the stalk off, but you leave the leaves alone because the plant relies on the leaves and their small roots to rebuild the storage system in the bulb. And that's the best way to have any bulb flower again the next year. If a
If
bulb is exhausted, you'll find two instances in which a bulb will not flower. One, that it was forced, it's used up too much energy, and it needs a year to grow its greens to build up its bulb. Or it's a young bulbette or bulbile, which are the little guys that grow on the side. And a healthy bulb makes babies. And those babies will only give you greens on the first year. Depending on the bulb, it might take 2 years. So a bulb will spread this way. So the best way to have a healthy bulb for the next year is to let it replenish itself and just treat it like a garden perennial. Don't overfeed it. Make sure it's got good mulch. And once those leaves die down, then you can cut them back.
if I
And
could,
a lot of people will plant bulbs underneath shrubs and whatnot. So that unsightly kind of mess they make is covered.
if I
Um,
can add to that, there
mhm.
are species bulbs, botanical bulbs that will come up every year. They're not large, showy, but in their own right, they're quite pretty and quite lovely. And they will naturalize themselves. So if you plant two or three, next year you may have four or five. The year after, you'll have more. So do look at for botanical tulips or species tulips, and you'll find that they're not as wanting as much care as the tulips that you find nowadays, like the parrot tulips or any of these others that have been bred and bred and bred that require a big enough bulb to actually flower. As Joe was saying, if you actually feed the bulb just after it flowers, it does produce more starch and may next year produce flowers again. But it's been my experience that they don't normally do that for more than 3 or 4 years.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and with tulips in particular, I find they don't last very long. I think you can extend their life. I'm not talking about the naturalizing ones that Richard was talking about, which I think are absolutely darling. I like the little ones.
Oh, they're
Um,
my favorite.
the big succulent ones, if you let the bulb refeed itself, like Joe described, and then dig it out, and then treat it the way you would a bulb that you bought in the nursery or garden center or whatever in the fall, then you're much more likely to have good success because the soil where you planted it is not as depleted as it would have been otherwise, and it just does a lot better by digging it out. But it's a lot of work, so you may or may not want to do that. You may just want to buy new bulbs.
The other
And
thing
I find as
is,
well that the species are far less predated. Um, I used to love I haven't had them for a couple of years now, but it's the species tulip that is, I think it's Clusiana, which is white with a bright yellow center and dark stamens, and they're just exquisite. And I noticed that the deer would not browse them. And a lot of your species bulbs in particular, they flower low and they have higher leaves. And deer are lazy. They're not going to rummage down in there. So there's both the physical aspect and just for some reason, they don't seem to taste as good as the hybrids. And the other thing I discovered, particularly with my earlies, like my Tomesiana crocus, that are a species crocus, the first bumblebees just go crazy over them. The bumblebees will just love those early tulips or early crocus, the species crocus, and the longhorn bee, which is another native bee that comes out quite early, loves the species tulips. So having those, although many of the bulbs are not native, the pollinators certainly respond to them, and giving your pollinators a really good start in spring, the bulbs are part of that. And unfortunately, so are the dandelions. When I was taught beekeeping, my teacher said that one of the most pollen-rich sources for the wild bees was dandelions. So I would let them sort of flower, but not really get started before they got dug up. So it was like some for the bees, some for me. Right?
Yeah,
If
that's how I feel about dandelions. I mean, aside from the fact that they're actually very pretty, they're just too common for us to want to have them. If they were rare, we'd plant them in the garden like nobody's business. But the way I time putting my early crop mason bees out is when I see a good crop of dandelion, then I feel it's time to put my mason bees out. But I do stagger them so that I have some come out really early for the early fruit trees and then later ones. And I usually do it in three batches, so that even my very later apple trees still benefit from the mason bee crop that I put out. So that's very worthwhile. But you can't delay the mason bees forever. They're not only temperature sensitive, they also have an internal clock. So if you wait too long, that internal clock would have run down and they come out no matter what. So time them by putting them out when the first dandelions or a good crop of dandelions is out, put a mid-season one out. And I think just about now is the time that you should put any remaining ones that you still are harboring in your fridge out as well.
my mason bees, actually, I got them from Joe, and only two of the tubes actually worked. So now I've split them up, and both mason bee houses have bees going in and out of them. So I just wanted to let you know, Joe, they
Oh,
didn't die
good.
on me.
Oh, good. Well, I also purchased this year some leafcutter bees because they're the summer bee, and I've not harvested them before, so I'm really excited to see how they respond to things.
The other thing
And
we were talking about tulips and spring bulbs. A lot of these tulip spring bulbs and stuff come from Mediterranean climates where it's really dry in the summer and wet and cool in the sun in the winter
in the
and
winter, yeah.
fall. So that digging them up probably does do them a lot of good because we're not continually watering them. They don't have a chance to rot or anything else. So you know what I mean? That's might be a good idea to pull them out if you want to after the foliage has died down.
So
Question
what
in the
else have we
Q&A.
got, Darby?
Yeah, what does ground layering mean in terms of the rhodo spring care?
Okay, well, it's not really spring care, it's spring propagation. If you have a lovely rhodo that is actually on its last legs, and you are able to put a branch down and weigh it down on the soil level, you can put a little notch into the cambium layer of the rhodo and just put a little bit of um, rooting
Yeah, you
hormone
want
on
some
it.
rooting hormone, don't you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
rooting hormone, and then you weigh it down with a rock, you cover it with soil and leave it. And next year you may have, well, you will have a new cutting. You just cut it off proximal to the to where it joins the tree or the rotor itself, and then pot it up, and you have a new roto. And there are some that are very difficult to propagate, and this is a wonderful way of propagating them, especially in the spring, because remember, it's cool and it's before they're starting to grow. Once they start growing, roots will start growing and you'll get new flush of leaves. So it's a wonderful time to do it. Not taking cuttings, ground layering is an excellent time.
And that's how I
So
started all my fig
how
trees.
deep, how deep do you put
About
the
about maybe 4 inches or so on top of it, making sure that the leaves are not touching the soil at all. And you've got the branch coming down, notch it, put a rock on it, and then put your soil on it and leave it. Just make sure you keep it wet though. You know, like if it's in a garden, you're going to be watering your garden, so it's not much of a difficulty.
We had just a comment that they've been digging up weeds and grass and can't believe how dry it is. Kind of scary looking into the summer. We're trying not to think about it, I guess,
Yeah,
maybe.
Oh,
exactly.
now that's a good segue. I need to that's a good segue because I need to
Oh, yes.
apologize. I won't be giving my seminar on smart water and xeriscaping um, coming up.
Until the
I,
heat of the
I
summer when people
Yeah,
realize
Yes,
how
until
it
the
much they
is
heat of
need it.
summer in
summer.
August.
Richard has kindly offered to switch with me, and Richard will be doing the orchid growing um, on our next seminar, and I will be talking about smart water in August. So, in a way, a good time because it will give you a whole bunch of experience with drought already, and
Yes.
you
And
can
it's
make it part of your spring, your fall um, uh, putting the garden to bed,
the other
setting
thing
up your
is
water for the next year.
orchids are a gift that is given quite often in the springtime and at Easter and that kind of stuff. So perfect timing.
So
Yeah.
Joe, are you going to talk about the sort of water smart and how not to um, overhead watering
And
and drip
yes,
irrigation and all this kind of
we're
stuff?
talking about using water efficiently, storing water, letting the landscape help you with your watering, which is really the foundation of xeriscaping. Xeriscaping doesn't mean no water. It means designing for using as little water as possible. And um, in Nanaimo, they have an absolutely wonderful program called the Water Smart Team. And you can get wonderful brochures on that. And I know Los Angeles has a program where you can buy water tanks. And I'm sure many other American cities do have as well. Nanaimo has one, and
RDN has been
Yeah, Courtney has one, and so the cities and towns are getting very proactive in water conservation, even in the so-called rainforest.
I put in a 3,000 gallon cistern because of our
Yeah,
summer
yeah,
and was able to water the yard or the garden for till probably about the middle to the end of July on that.
yeah. And there are lots of ways to move water around, and so
Mhm.
I'll be talking about all the aspects of dealing with water in different types of gardens.
I just wanted to add something about the greenhouses. Uh, Really important at this time of year that you put your shade cloth on your greenhouses because of the sun. The sun is higher in the sky, it's more intense. If you don't want to overheat your greenhouse or kill your little seedlings, please consider doing putting your sunscreen on or actually whitewashing it. Another method that can be done. Make sure that you're able to cool the greenhouse, that your doors, that your windows are able to open during the day and then they close at night so that the heat won't build up in there.
What do you do for ventilation, Richard?
I have a fan that just goes on at any about 28 degrees. So it's on a thermostat. So I set it at 28 and I set my little heater to go on at 15. So I'm keeping it at that late spring sort of temperature range.
And you don't have the fan going the entire time to make sure that you have air movement?
I have fans going all the time. Yeah, I've got a fan pointing down from the ceiling to bring the heat down, and I've got a fan to circulate the heat around the bottom of the greenhouse so that the air doesn't get stratified. And if it's stratified, then the sensor doesn't work quite as well. So you've got to keep the air moving. Also, moving the air around means that you don't get as much disease and uh, fungus growing in your greenhouse and stuff.
That's really where I'm coming from is that you want that air movement to keep the mold and the
Yeah,
damping off and all this kind of stuff to a bare minimum.
yeah. And I've not ever had any problems with damping off in the greenhouse. I have had problems starting seeds outside and having them damp off, but never in the greenhouse.
Mm.
What else we got?
Okay, is there a general rule of thumb or guide as to when you can start planting certain plants? For instance, if the daffodils are blooming, then it's a good time to plant peas.
Actually, a good um, book on that would be the West Coast Seeds. They've got a perfect chart in there as to when you should start planting your seeds. That would be West Coast Seeds, and they do it for the Canadian regions. I know they do it for the coastal interior BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, and all parts east.
We'll drop that
Yes,
link in the chat
I really
too.
like their tables because it gives you sort of a range. But
Yeah,
beyond that, for the individual crops, it'll tell you what temperatures you should plant them at when for
yeah,
seeding and so on.
it's
And
sort
it's
of fun.
really interesting when you look at some of the tables and graphs, how different it is or how long it takes. And I don't have the numbers off by hand in my head, but say lettuce, for instance, if you were to try and seed lettuce at 0 degrees, it would never germinate. If you try it at 5 degrees, it might germinate after about 25, 30 days. If you want to germinate it at 15, all of a sudden in 5 to 8 days, it will have germinated. And so the West Coast Seed Catalog is an absolute wonderful handbook that will tell you what the ideal temperature is. And then, of course, I mean, for things like tomatoes, you want to be sure that your soil temperature is at least 15, while for things like peas that Richard, and me too have already put out, we can have a soil temperature of about 5 or 6 degrees. So it really depends what crop you're dealing with. And of course, if you're up several hundred meters, you're going to have a very different temperature profile than if you're down at sea level. I always find I'm up at about 100 meters above sea level, and I'm in the spring almost 10 days later than my friends who have oceanfront property in Nanaimo. It's remarkable. Later on in the season, it's no longer so important. It'll even itself out. but early in the temperature, and there are soil thermometers that are worth looking at and getting so that you can actually dig down. I mean, I like Joe's description of putting your fingers in until your knuckles and seeing how cold it feels down there. But I think if you want to be a little more accurate, and if your fingers are too arthritic like mine are, then a soil
they don't
thermometer
take it.
is a great
You
thing to
have
have.
brain loads.
Yeah. Now
Exactly.
there is a term called phenology, which is PHEN, phenology, and it is dealing with marker plants. And I had talked about earlier about setting out the bird feeder, the hummingbird feeders when the wild currant blooms. Another marker plant is when the forsythia blooms, prune your roses. And all these old farmers' sayings, even with tomatoes, how soon the new moon in June. We all plant our tomatoes too early. So if the new moon is in late May, you can plant your tomatoes then. But if the new moon isn't until June, then you pot your tomatoes up one more time. And it was what my grandfather used to say. And you can go on to the Farmer's Almanac. Sometimes you have to be careful of that site because it gets infected from time to time. But they have a lot of the marker plants and these old farmers' sayings hung on for a reason. It wasn't magic. It was, again, observation. What happens when this happens? What happens after this? So I personally don't know about planting peas when the daffodils bloom, but there might be a saying, and you can get books on phenology. So to me, of course, as Dorothy and Richard say, um, you have to get scientific about it. What's the soil temperature? But a lot of our grandparents didn't have thermometers, but they had eyes and they had memories. And I find it fun to do it that way. Not that I don't check the soil temperature, but I like the magic of it. I think it's neat.
I think the magic is wonderful. But you know, it also shows our climate change. Not the thermometer doesn't,
Just gonna
but
say,
I used to firmly believe that in Nanaimo, which has Mount Benson as a backdrop, that you planted your tomatoes once all the snow was gone from Mount Benson. Doesn't work anymore. A, we
there's
don't
no
have enough
snow on it.
snow.
Don't have
And
snow
B,
on Mount Benson anymore.
no, exactly. So, I mean, when I look out of my window now, I could be planting my tomatoes. I don't think so. But
Yeah.
but yeah, so things have changed. So that's where the soil thermometer really comes in.
Yeah.
The thing is, things are changing almost every 4 or 5 years. The climate seems to be changing.
It's pretty remarkable.
The
But if you
city's
follow the
getting,
plants, if you
yeah,
follow what the plants are doing,
and you
then
follow the plants and actually use a thermometer, as Dorothy had suggested, to
yeah.
take the soil temperature.
So
Works.
what else do we have, Darby?
Um, we did that one. I have two honeyberry bushes, ask cap. I don't
Yeah.
know the variety, but I think they're the same variety. If they're planted near my blueberry patch, which is 10 blueberry shrubs for varieties, will they cross-pollinate? I'm being told
Oh,
different
no,
information.
no, they won't,
Oh,
because
they're totally
haskap
different
is a
species.
Lonicera. It's
Yeah,
related to um,
The
it's a
honeysuckle.
Lonicera,
honeysuckle.
a honeysuckle. Thank you. And the blueberry is a vaccinium.
Yeah,
So not only different species, they're different genus. And no, they will not cross-pollinate. They will
Whether
certainly,
the haskap needs it cross-pollination to do better with the two plants or not, I'm not sure how that works. I haven't got enough experience with haskaps. So, I mean, when you think of some cherries, they really do a whole lot better if they have another cherry nearby. Or for that matter, it's true for a lot of the apple trees, especially the triploid apple trees. You need apple trees that are of a different variety to cross-pollinate. So I don't know how it works with the haskaps.
They
Blueberries
have a little
also
bit.
do better. Go
Go ahead.
ahead,
Yeah,
Darby.
the rest of it was quite long. Some say I need two different varieties, honeyberry, and others are saying that the blueberries and raspberry bushes should be adequate for
No,
cross-pollination, feeding
I
into
would
what
say
you were
two
saying.
varieties of the
Yeah.
Huskies.
Yeah, yeah.
That would
I
be
don't depend on the blueberries and the raspberries because they simply won't cross-pollinate a haskap. Is it, that end of story. Um, and
they
but I
don't get
think sort of like pears, they're sort of partially self-fertile, and you're quite right, Dorothy. Whenever there's more than one or more than one variety, they always seem to do better.
they do. Yeah, definitely.
But I don't know, does any of you know how many different varieties of haskap there are? I mean, it's such a new crop to our area. I know they grow a fair bit of it in Nova Scotia, and it's a real fantastic money maker for the berry growers. But here, I haven't seen much in the way of haskap.
I haven't seen it that often. I'm wondering if what's her name?
There, I just looked it up, and apparently there's like dozens of varieties.
Oh,
I
really?
know
We
very
would
little
be
about them
probably.
as well.
Hmm,
Tons are available here. She says, Leanne.
Yeah.
interesting.
Well, it's nice to know that we're getting a new berry crop, and apparently they're particularly high in vitamin C and all this kind of stuff. So it'll be interesting to grow, but I don't have any personal experience.
Yeah. Go ahead, Darb.
We'd love to hear how it goes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Next one, my ornamental alliums have seeded everywhere. How long does it take for them to form new bulbs so I can transfer elsewhere, or should I dig up the seedlings and grow in pots to grow on?
Where are they growing now? Like, are they disturbing you? Like, can you grow anything else there, or do you want to plant anything else there? Is that the issue? Because normally, if you leave them grow a little bit larger, then they're much easier to repot versus, just pulling out this little twig and hoping you'll it'll grow on
Give
you.
them give them time to establish themselves,
Yeah.
and before you dig them up.
I find I get a whole lawn of them if I'm not careful to remove the seed heads. And the seed heads are so nice as dried flowers. So make sure that you remove them in time and then just seed the few that you do want rather than having a lawn of ornamental alliums.
It'd be pretty though.
Yeah, they are pretty.
Would I be wiser to keep my dahlias in larger pots rather than in the ground to conserve water?
No.
Hmm.
No,
I
I
wouldn't.
agree with Joe. Pots dry out a lot quicker than soil in the ground does. And so you have to keep watering the pots. And I think from a sheer water standpoint, if you're not worried about the deer eating them or whatever other concerns you might have, but from a sheer water preservation standpoint, put them in the ground.
What I've
And
done.
as well, in the ground, they get fed by the soil.
Yeah.
So
What
you're
I've
going to have
done.
healthier plants. Simply spot water them. It was one of my neighbors stands there for 10 minutes. So the water's good for them. So no, hose on, light hose on plant, count to 10, stop, move to next plant. um, and you conserve the water by mulching the base of the plant.
Yes.
I've grown mine in pots. So
There you
That's
go.
because Joe wasn't there to
Can
tell
we
him how to
say?
water.
what I do is I put a saucer under them. So
Oh, well, there,
the water
It's
see?
okay,
doesn't
you're
run
still a good
out.
person, Richard.
We still love you, dear.
But
Even
now
though 2 out of 3 master gardeners here said no.
well, I haven't had luck. But
Why we're
now
having a panel discussion.
I've got them in a raised bed that's actually insulated with that. It's like bubble wrap, the silver bubble wrap, so it keeps the bed a lot warmer. So I've just kept them in there, and they've grown the last 2 years, so I'm not doing too badly, I guess. And last
No.
winter we had -6. They all survived, and this
Wow.
year,
Yeah.
well, it's been -2, so I'm sure they'll do well. But you can keep
So
them.
you don't even dig them up and store them away?
Nope,
Hmm.
nope.
Wow.
Wow.
I only grew, being a lazy gardener, I only grew the gallery dahlias and planted them a little bit deeper and mulched them very well. And because they didn't freeze, they did well in
Yeah,
my garden for years that way.
they did. They're still doing well in my garden, and it really depends on where you live. Like the closer to the water here on the island, yes, you can leave them in pots, bring them into the garage, let them dry out, cut off the top growth and let them dry for the winter, and then bring the pot out in the spring if you wish. There are a lot of those little miniature ones that, will do fairly well in a pot. The only time I dig them up, Dorothy, is when I'm dividing them. And then I dig them up, divide them, give them away, and then repot some of the newer, or not repot, replant some of the newer
Mm.
tubers.
And you don't find that you get a lot of whatever pests and whatnot crawling into them?
Oh, yeah,
No.
well, they're into the flowers, of course.
No, well, the flowers for sure. No, I'm talking more about the tubers.
No, I've not had any issues at all. Maybe it's because they're raised beds. I don't know. But I've
Mm.
never really had
I
an issue.
had never had troubles with pests in my dahlia tubers.
No, neither have I.
So no wire worms, no nothing like that.
No,
No,
not at
no,
all.
not,
Interesting.
I'd
Watch. This
have
summer
wire
I'll get
worms.
wire worms and it'll be your fault, Dorothy.
Yeah.
Okay. I jinxed them.
I
Yes.
would have wire worms in my vegetable garden, and I used to put um, potato traps in,
Yes.
and that worked really, really well, and got them down to such a level that I lost very little. And
Mhm.
I would plant a row of sacrificial lettuce. I know this is hard for you to hear, dear, because you love lettuce, but the wireworm, of course, because of the core in the lettuce, I would go out in the morning on slug patrol, and I could see a lettuce, and a leaf would absolutely be flat, and I knew I had a wireworm, so I would pick the plant up, and then sure enough, and I'd pull the wireworm out and then replant the lettuce. And
Huh.
I would lose maybe 30% of them, but they were my sacrificial plants anyway. Um, if the wireworm had pierced the core too far, then bacteria and fungus would get into the lettuce and the plant would die. But I would have 70% of the lettuces survive, and got rid of a lot of the wireworms that way, plus planting the potato slices. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Do describe for our audience what you mean by sacrificial potatoes, because I think that works really well.
Oh yeah. Well, the sacrificial lettuces were when you have too many, and you have wire worms, you plant the plant that is to feed the pest in order to catch the pest. It's a pest trap. In terms of the potatoes, they're very sweet and starchy, so they're the favorite food of the wireworm. And you uh, cut the potato in thick slices, and then you can stick an old fork or a skewer into the top of it so you know where it is, and you push it into the ground just about that far outside of the vegetables root area, and they will migrate to the potato rather than go to the plant because the potato tastes better. So then when you go out every day and you pick up your potato and you pull out your wire worm and you send it to the grandmother, thank you for your service, squish, and then you put the potato back in the ground. So I lost very, very few vegetables when I had a wireworm infestation, or where part of my um, vegetable bed was near grass, and I had neighbors with grass. and that's the wireworm is a larvae that is planted in the grass. So it migrates to where the food is as a worm, which is your vegetables. So that's why you can have infestations even though you manage your soil quite well.
Is there a nematode that you can use on wireworms? Do you know?
I found the traps were so effective that I've not heard of a nematode, but that's money rather than just a potato. You know, is potato is good, right?
We
What
have
else have
one
we got?
last question. Yes,
Ask.
my peony are really old and have lovely flowers each year. Should I divide them?
Hmm, I would.
That's a tough
Yes.
one. I don't know, Richard, what do you think? But I find peonies are not easy to propagate that way. And you really have to give them very tender, loving care and plant them just at the right depth and don't damage them as you're digging them up. So I don't know if you have either Richard or Joe has additional
I
but
wouldn't
I
be dividing.
personally, if they're doing well, I would leave well enough alone. That's my way of looking at the
Even
peony
even if
division.
even if she is a granny and she gives you lovely flowers, just thank her because they do really resent they resent being transplanted and moved and divided. And you have a beautiful plant, and if it's not crowding anything out, um, don't threaten it when it's not going to do well by dividing. Leave her where she is. If it's crowding and you love that plant, move the other plants.
Right.
You know, give her full life, and if she's beautiful, then she will continue to bloom.
Now, if it's a lovely rhodo, just off with its head and then keep the peony.
Well, rhodos can be moved at
True
your
enough.
will. I mean, you know, when I see some of my friends move their rhodos that are taller than 6 foot and wider than 6 foot, then they still move them and they still do well. I find that absolutely amazing.
My
But
whole
peonies are
garden,
different.
my whole garden was moved to this new lot, and I moved some 50 odd rhodos, and they're all surviving. And
They're
some,
quite amazing, and it is kind of the type of root system they have that allows for
Yes.
that, you
yeah,
know.
don't be moving them in the summer or the spring. Fall's the best
Unless
time.
you have all the water in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
No more Q&As, but we have some chats.
yeah. I was just checking as to what we have.
No.
We have a few people who love broad beans, Dorothy.
Yes, I
Oh,
see.
hallelujah.
See, you're
I'm
not
not alone.
alone.
All three of you have said you like them. That's great.
There's a wonderful seed company in Manitoba called Heritage Harvest, and they offer several type of broad beans. And I grew a Russian variety, a small purple broad bean, and a little less starchy than the big green ones,
Yeah.
and quite sweet. And oh my God, what a soup bean they make!
So,
And I must say, the Windsor broad beans, which are the only ones that I see in the West Coast Seed Catalog, are not my favorite. But I have a variety that there's a heritage variety. All I can say it has purpley flowers, and stands about at its best stands about 3 feet high, and they're wonderful. And
Are
then
they
don't dry.
brownish? Are they kind of a brownish bean, or are
Well,
they
I
green?
harvest them when they're small,
Oh, okay.
relatively, and fresh, and then I eat them like that, or I freeze them. I never dry them. I don't let them fully ripen because then they are less attractive.
mhm.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, I like the little Russian one. I would let it dry, and use it as a horticultural bean because it was such a fabulous soup bean.
Nice.
Yeah, yeah.
We have some more questions.
What
Did
have
you
we
find some
got?
more,
All
Richard?
right.
Yeah,
Two
there's
more popped in. Is it worth trying to move raspberry canes right now? Or is it better to wait for fall?
I'd wait till fall, unless you're going to be, unless you're moving them in, you're actually putting them in the soil. I don't know if it's such a good idea to divide them at this time of year. What do you think?
They seem to do quite well. I mean, we at the community gardens in Nanaimo, we have quite a raspberry area, and we've sold the excess that we have, and they seem to do very well. People are quite happy. I mean, I'm not saying that they might not do better in the fall, but there's nothing to say that you couldn't do it now, as if you have decent soil and make sure that they get well established and don't let them dry out in between times.
Also the
Okay.
question, Alex had that question about tulips.
About tulips. Any of
Botanical
your
tulips.
species tulips are hardier and last longer as a plant year to year, and often have a longer bloom time. So Tulip petarda, Tulip clusiana, the Darwin hybrid, and it's called Darwin hybrid. It is one of the very earliest hybrids, but it's a very hardy plant. And it's the one with the mottling on the leaves. And they are hardy and they last longer. And the only thing with tulips is remember they are deer candy.
Mhm.
So I take bird netting and I simply make a fence with a few stakes, and I deliberately make it flimsy because the deer don't like the movement.
Hmm.
And you just put it a foot ahead in a kind of a semicircle of where the tulip is. And the deer can't reach quite far enough to munch it. Uh, and the nice thing about the green bird netting is not only is it feathery and flimsy, it disappears when you step away. So your neighbors don't get all weirded out because you have
I like
netting.
the idea of a 6 foot fence, barbed wire along the top, and guns at both ends of the garden. Machine
Yeah,
guns.
right.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh,
And
yeah.
you
Well,
get
but
venison out of it too.
venison's good eating.
So there
I
was a question about morning glory.
Mm. Oh,
I'm not sure I'm entitled to answer that one.
well,
Oh,
there's the native, what we call morning glory or bindweed. Um,
Bindweed.
and it is what's called a colonizer. In other words, it's a plant that thrives like fireweed in disturbed soil. And its job is to put its roots out and to grow and to stabilize everything. So here we are, we lived in a totally disturbed environment. So, of course, it goes crazy. I managed to um, slow down and ultimately, after 3 years, kill off the bindweed by mowing its roots. And every time something would come up, it would just get cut off. And when it was out in the lawn, it would get mowed.
Mhm.
And simply depriving it of its food, it will slowly die. But it is a native, it is rampant, and we have created an environment that allows it to thrive very, very nicely. Thank you very much. So it's just something you have to tend to. Don't bother spraying it, don't bother doing any of that. That's a waste of time. Just deprive it of its light and cut it off every time you see it as close to the ground as you can.
It's got underground
And
work. So
and if you can pull out some of the roots, even better. But the
Yes.
roots are very long and very tedious. But if you just sort of gradually pull, especially if your soil is reasonably soft, then you can get a fair number of roots out, and that helps some. But it is
Yeah.
a nuisance.
Yeah.
got another question, Darby.
We just have the last one. I have a variegated winter Daphne that hasn't really grown for 2 years. Can it be moved? It is in full sun.
Not a good place for it in full sun. It probably burnt. And this time of the year is not a good time to move it. I would say fall would be a better time to move it. They don't like being moved, for one. Once they're established, they've got their root system, and if you do anything to them, you could cut them back, it could be the death of them. So they're very, very hard to move. Uh, I would suggest probably that you pick up another one and uh, do something with the one you have. Um, you could try it in the fall.
Depending on where it is, you
Yeah.
might try
Shading it.
creating a bit of shade for it
Yeah.
and see if it responds. If it doesn't respond, then as Richard said, you'll have to go do some shopping therapy and get a new one.
Right. I've had one, and it was just a small plant. I brought it from the other garden, and I was able to save it, but I did pull it out of the ground in October and then kept it in a fairly large pot and watered it fairly well for 2 years that was in the pot. And it did survive. It's now growing quite nicely by the front door. But like I said, depending on the size and stuff like that, remember, if you can only get that much soil and the plant is this big, chances are it's not going to survive, right? You'd end up having to cut it back to bare wood, and they really don't like that.
That's all of them.
My goodness, damn, we're
I
good.
think that's our time.
I have a question for Dorothy. Dorothy, I planted celery last
Celery
spring.
or celeriac?
Celery
Okay.
last spring. I just harvested it now. I didn't
Yeah.
realize they will grow through the winter.
Yes.
And they're
if-
very
if
they're
with
very
any luck.
slow growing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, when you look at Linda Gilkison's tables, she says start the seeds in late January, early February, and then you harvest them throughout the next winter and fall and spring rather. So that's
Oh,
basically where you are now.
right. So if I leave what was left of it, I just cut it off. It should grow again.
It might. I mean, in other climates, they certainly can be perennial. The celeriac root, you know what I'm talking about, the
Yeah,
bulb that
enormous.
forms,
Yeah,
which is one of my favorite vegetables.
I love
But
it too.
anyway, the bulbs then get so woody and hard and are no longer attractive. But I suspect that you could keep the plant going and then make seeds. It's a biennial. Make
Right.
seeds in that year, and then you keep on going. But yeah, it's a very slow to get going, and you have to be awfully patient even in terms of how long it takes for the seed to germinate. You think, oh, it's you might as well throw that pot away or whatever. It's not ever going to do it.
Sometimes it
But
takes 28
patience,
days.
yeah, patience, and eventually it will. So if you like cutting celery, just give yourself a chance.
The one thing that happened though is the slugs got into it. So
Mm,
there was these slug trails on the inside of the stalk. So most of
less attractive.
less attractive, yes. We had the leafy part in a soup, so it was quite good.
That's okay.
Yeah.
So are we all done questions? We're just about out of time anyway.
I
Yeah.
think we did a great job here. Thank you, everybody, for coming. We'll be sending out the video, and if you haven't already and you'd like to register for other sessions, different topics, Richard will be talking about orchids next month, and we've got a whole back catalog of these as well, so that'll be in the link in your email.
Well, thank you all for listening to us.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Well,
Dorothy and
thank you
Joe
so
and
much.
Richard.
And
There's
really do
another-
appreciate the folks who come from out of area.
Yes.
When you come and talk with us, we learn as well. And so we really appreciate the folks from far away. Thank you.
Thank you, and good night.
Good
Good
night.
night.